Chapter 1. Rejection. Wolf Awakening Ceremony, Moonwillow Pack. Viola Linden, I reject you as my sworn mate and recede my claim on you. Evan, the alpha heir of the Moonwillow Pack, announced, his voice echoing in the suddenly silent halls. Those words rang inside Viola's head like a broken bell long fallen to the ground, but the echoes still remained in the air. She couldn't believe he had said those words. It felt like an illusion, an impossible dream unfolding before her eyes, but the sharp pain in her chest made it clear to her that it was reality. Evan, her Evan who had cared for her. Just an hour ago he had promised her a lifetime of togetherness. She was his sworn mate and he had laid his claim on her. The moment she got her wolf he would mark her and nothing would be able to tear them apart in this lifetime. But he was rejecting her. Evan, you can't. Viola's voice broke as she shakily reached out to hold his trousers. He had pushed her away from him, making her fall to the floor after her wolf didn't surface at the moment when everyone who had come of age had begun to transform. Don't you dare touch me, you little piece of shit. He gritted furiously, looking down at her with disgust in his golden eyes, like she was dirt he would step on. A while ago he had been making eternal promises to her. Now he looked at her like absolute scum. The disbelief and pain were heavily pressing down her chest. Not even in her wildest dreams had she ever thought a day would come where Evan would treat her this way. I will not take a wolfless, arrogant bitch as my mate nor my Luna. As if rejecting her before everyone in their pack and the guests wasn't enough, her sworn mate reached out his arm and put it around the beautiful, red-haired, innocent-looking woman next to him, causing Viola's eyes to widen in disbelief. Lenny is my mate and the future Luna of the Moonwillow Pack. You are not accepted here anymore, Viola, the alpha heir announced. Viola's eyes fell on Lenny's fair neck, where a visible mark could be seen, proving the fact that her sworn mate had marked another woman. A woman he pretended to dislike, and whom they all thought would end up an omega for her meekness. Lenny was the pack's delicate, innocent flower, the meek young woman, or so she had made everyone believe, because at this moment she was looking down at Viola with a subtle smile of victory. Her, Viola Linden, the daughter of the Moonwillow Pack's beta, whom many looked up to and gave everything to because they believed she would be their future Luna, for she and Evan were inseparable. She was now reduced to this. Someone rejected in public. How could he do this to her when they had been together since childhood? She was supposed to get her wolf today when she turned 19. Many had anticipated this day, as others were turning with her, but everyone except her had gotten a wolf. Viola had been confused about why she didn't get a wolf, but it didn't stop there. Not only did she turn out to be wolfless, her pheromones suddenly became strong enough to make the men lose control. But when they realized it was coming from her, a wolfless, they all stepped away in disgust, including Evan, and worse, her parents and family. Now on the floor of the Great Hall of the Awakening Ceremony, Viola, who rarely let emotions affect her and feared little, felt exactly that. Fear, because she knew where her fate would land her if Evan didn't stand by his promise to mate with her. Not that it was possible anymore when he had marked another, but as the alpha heir, his words carried authority and could save her today. Otherwise, she would be doomed for life. Being wolfless and unmated in the world of werewolves was the worst fate anyone could fall into. Crawling on the floor, she reached to hold him again, swallowing her pride and dignity as she pleaded, "Please don't do this to me. You know what will happen to me if you don't accept me." You. Evan let out a cold laugh, his arm tightening around Lenny, who clung to his side while looking down at Viola with something that looked like pity, but Viola knew better. I never knew Viola Linden would ever beg anyone, he said with a smirk. Are you so afraid of the fate the wolfless and unmated have that you would beg me? Poor thing. He leaned down and whispered so only she could hear, I never actually wanted to make you my mate, Viola, and the moon goddess has just given me the chance to turn you away. You are a selfish bitch. I would have loved you if you were not so full of yourself. Lenny is the one I wanted from the start. Viola, too shocked and in disbelief, turned to look at him. I thought you hated Lenny. Evan scoffed. She and I have been having a good time while you were busy doing my assignments to make me pass the alpha test. Thanks to you, I passed, and thanks to you, I have the power to protect my mate. Enjoy your days being a hollow, Viola. A hollow, the lowest of lows in a pack, even lower than the omegas, was that going to be her fate from now? He smirked and then pulled back, seemingly enjoying the devastation and shock in her tear-filled blue eyes. Why? That was the only question running through Viola's head. She had given him her time and attention, going around and paying people to steal information, going behind her father's back to spy and give him what he needed to become alpha instead of his brother. In the end, he rejected her and chose Lenny, who had never done nothing to help him. Enjoy your days being a hollow. Those words sent panic through her, strong enough to overpower the betrayal. She turned to look around at everyone, covering their noses and staring at her like something dragged out of a sewer. No, 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 no. She couldn't become a hollow. Viola turned to her parents standing at the side along with her sister and brother, and before she even moved to their side to plead with them for help, they all stepped back. That action alone was a clear sign that they did not want her anymore. Not you too. Not after everything I did for your sake. Mom, Dad, help me. Don't let this happen to me. I can't be a hollow. Please, I will do anything you tell me to, don't let this happen to me. She screamed in agony, rising to run to their side for help, but her father, the beta of the Moonwillow pack, barked at the deltas surrounding the hall. Take this filth away from here before she stains us further. Take her away so we can finally breathe clean air. Others chimed in, people who an hour ago had been saying they couldn't wait for her to become their Luna. Someone even stepped forward and kicked her hard in the gut before she could reach her father's side, sending her falling back with such force it felt like her spine had broken. Viola was oblivious to the pain at that moment, because she knew what came with being reduced to a hollow was worse than this. She couldn't be a hollow. She looked up to beg Evan again or anyone who would listen, but her eyes met his mate instead, who was smirking, the pack's innocent flower. Please hurry and take her away so my mate can breathe. Look at him, he looks so sick, Lenny said as she rubbed Evan's chest, looking at Viola with pity. Viola's pride was destroyed. Her parents had clearly disowned her by stepping away. The people who once liked her had humiliated her, and her reputation had been reduced to nothing by being rejected. What else could she lose? Something hot, angry, and bitter trickled down her face as she looked at the two of them in the crowd, and at the approaching deltas who were going to take her away. Evan's green eyes flickered in surprise at the sight of her tears. It was the first time he had ever seen her cry in front of him. He almost smiled at the fact that he had made the pack's Ice Queen cry, but then he realized they weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of rage. Viola saw nothing but red. She pushed herself up from the ground like a rising phoenix. She wanted to spill blood. She felt something hot surge inside her, something she had never felt before, born from resentment and the betrayal of everyone around her. But as she moved to attack, Evan, who knew her too well, saw it coming. He grabbed her by the neck, choking the air out of her as he slapped her twice with his other hand, so hard she tasted blood on her tongue and her vision blurred. Bitch, you think you can attack my mate in front of me? He whispered. You have served your purpose for me in life. You always made me feel like a fool, Viola. It's time you taste it. Nobody likes you, not even your adoptive parents. You can never amount to anything after this again. He slapped her again, not remembering all the times she had taken the blame for him and given him everything. Not remembering that it was because of her sleepless nights and hard work that he would be crowned alpha. The pain of his blows was nothing compared to the pain tearing through her heart as he tossed her into the deltas, hands and pulled his mate back against his side. Take her away. No, 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 Viola screamed inside her head, but the words never reached her bleeding lips as she stared at Evan and the crowd. Being a hollow was worse than death itself, and Viola realized she would have preferred death over this fate. Because she knew, just like everyone else, that there was no way out of this hell. Chapter 2. Hollow. 4 years later. The Hollows, quarters in the Moonwillow pack. Wake up, it's time for work. Viola was already awake, sitting in the cold room given to the Hollows. When one of the deltas assigned to wake them noticed her sitting there like a ghost, her legs crossed, her stone-cold blue eyes subtly fixed on him, her frizzy black hair framing her face like a madwoman, he scoffed. It's good that you've learned your lesson to wake up early and not glare at your superiors anymore. Get up. Luna, Lenny and Alpha Evan have asked for you in the house to serve them today, he ordered, opening the barred door for her and the other two Hollows. The Moonwillow pack was the third largest pack in the werewolf world, where the Moonwillow residents all lived within the same community, and the Hollow quarters were inside the Alpha's large estate. That was why he could request any hollow to serve him at will, and currently, the unwanted, wolfless beta's daughter was called out. The moment the other two got up, they shoved Viola out of their way and stepped out of the room, glaring over their shoulders at her like she was beneath them, when in fact they were all the same. Hollows. The nobodies. The outcasts. But Viola didn't blame them, because in the past she had done worse than that to the Omegas of the pack. She had been the popular girlfriend of an alpha heir, and because she didn't want to lose her position nor Evan's affection, she had done many despicable things to others. Her only reaction to their rudeness was a subtle clenching of her jaw. Had it been her before she was reduced to this, they wouldn't have been able to walk away after shoving her. But being a hollow didn't only strip one of their position and dignity, it stripped them of their speech as well. 4 years. 4 years she had been in this hellhole of quarters because of what Evan and her parents, who had the power to prevent it, had done. She didn't know why she never got her wolf, and if it weren't for her strong pheromones, Viola wouldn't have been any different from a human at all. In the werewolf world, there was no place for the wolfless, because they were considered a dysfunction within the pack. Even the lowest Omega had a better chance at life than the wolfless, who were few and rare. An Omega could still live among the pack and enjoy the luxury if they have a good family, but the wolfless. They were thrown into what was known as the hollows, a position where one's entire life would be spent serving the pack members. A position worse than that of even a servant, because as a hollow, you no longer had a voice to talk or be heard. You were only there to work. And work. The only way one could escape being a hollow after being proven wolfless was if an alpha or a beta decided to mate with one or claim one. That bond would protect a hollow from the hell of it. But Viola, who could have escaped being a hollow, had been betrayed by her sworn mate and rejected before everyone. Remembering how he had rejected her and hit her for Lenny's sake always twisted something sharp inside her heart. She had loved him with everything in her. Every night she lay down to sleep in the cold hollow quarters, she was haunted by his betrayal. After everything she had done for him, now she had learned that he had been titled Alpha, something that wouldn't have been possible without her help, and Lenny had been crowned his Luna. In their pack, when two brothers inherited the Alpha's blood, they both went through tests and assignments that determined who would be the heir. Being the Beta's daughter, Viola had promised to make it possible for Evan to become the next Alpha despite being the younger brother. She had used her influence and done things quietly, giving him information that helped him pass the tests instead of his brother. And in the end, he had still tossed her away and humiliated her. Lenny, the innocent Lenny who acted like she would never steal another woman's man. Lenny was a distant cousin of the Lindens, who had lost her parents in a brutal accident and was taken in by the Beta, Viola's father. Lenny had a quiet tendency to remind anyone looking at her of a delicate, innocent flower that ought to be protected. She had everyone wrapped around her fingers except Evan in the pack back then. He had never shown signs that he liked her until the day of the awakening. Viola wouldn't deny making the girl's life miserable in the pack, but everything she had done was because she was trying to protect Evan from ever noticing her the way others did. She wouldn't deny being a cruel person 4 years ago, but she had never been cruel without reason, and it had all been because of her love for Evan. The titles of Alpha and Luna had been given to them a few days ago, and to think they now wanted her to serve them was beyond enduring. But Viola had no voice to reject it. It had taken time for her to adjust to the life of a hollow after enjoying the benefits of being the Beta's daughter for 19 years, having everyone at her beck and call. Being the girlfriend and sworn mate of the Alpha heir had made her family pamper her even more, because she had the strong potential to become their next Luna. But everything had fallen and scrambled into dust at the awakening ceremony. Everyone had turned their backs on her and abandoned her here. Her friends, family and her lover. Viola had gone through beatings. She had been injected with countless doses of wolfsbane. She had been starved for days in the cold rooms before she finally accepted that there was no way out, and that this was the destiny the moon goddess had chosen for her. Take your pills. The Delta shoved a pill that helped conceal her pheromones into her palm and watched as she swallowed it without water. It tasted awful and Viola hated shoving it down her throat without water. The hollows were meant to be scentless and invisible, and having strong pheromones didn't make her life any easier. Then he shoved her toward the dressing room. Viola got into the maid's uniform. She did everything with automatic movements, without so much as an emotion on her face. This was her first time serving the new Alpha and his Luna, and though she hated it, Viola had no right to say she wouldn't. Refusing and defying would mean death, for she was no longer considered an important member of their pack. No other pack would welcome her if she were thrown out, only the life of a rogue awaited her, and that was worse, especially with her strong pheromones, because she would be turned into a breeding mate for the packless. Leaving the country was the only escape, but that could only happen if she had the means to travel, when she had nothing to her name anymore. No money, no cards, and not even her phone. Viola and the other hollows were soon taken to the kitchen, and she was given a tray to serve the Alpha and his Luna in their room. When Viola reached the door of the Alpha's room, the room she had believed, until 4 years ago, would be hers, she could already hear the sounds of moans and groans even before she entered. Her insides churned. She knocked. Evan's annoyed voice came from within. "Who the fuck is there?" he barked. Lenny's sweet voice came next. "It must be her, I can tell from the scentless presence. She must have brought our tea. Come in." Viola's fingers tightened around the tray as she stepped inside the room, which still held the strong smell of sex that made her nauseous and sick. "Good morning, Alpha and Luna," she greeted. "Bring the tea forward, and lift your head when you serve it," Lenny said, giving the useless hollow permission to look at them. She wanted her to see how she had taken her place and watch the misery on her face. Viola would have preferred not to lift her head, but it was the Luna's order. She served the tea and looked up, but her fingers trembled around the cup. Evan's head was buried between Lenny's breasts while Lenny looked at Viola over his bent head, smiling as she reached out. "My tea." Viola walked forward and handed the tea over, but because she was too devastated and heartbroken by the sight of the man she loved devouring another woman's body, a little tea spilled over the rim of the cup and touched Lenny's finger. Lenny cried out in pain, drawing Evan's attention immediately. "What happened, my pet?" Evan asked worriedly as he looked at his mate. Tears had suddenly filled Lenny's brown eyes as she looked at Viola in accusation. "She burned me with the tea." Evan's gold eyes snapped to Viola, and for a moment she felt the urge to step back and run. His alpha energy flared as his eyes glared daggers at her, as if he would cut her into pieces. The resentment in his gold eyes sent shivers down her spine. "Bitch, do you have a death wish, daring to hurt my Luna?" He gritted through clenched teeth, anger coloring his face red. Viola couldn't believe he thought a little tea could hurt a Luna, but of course she dared not speak. Hollows were not allowed to speak to the Alpha unless given permission. "Let it go, my Alpha." "She didn't do it intentionally," Lenny said, her voice quivering as though the tea had sliced her fingers off. But despite her words, her tears only made Evan angrier. "Go down on your knees and apologize to her." Viola would have apologized if it were anyone else and if she didn't hate Lenny with everything inside her. But instead of apologizing, she said, "It's just tea. She will survive." She regretted those words the moment they left her mouth, but it was too late to take them back. Evan angrily grabbed a decorative iron idol from his nightstand and hurled it at her. It struck her right eye with brutal force, and Viola saw a flash of red, then black, before the pain consumed her to the back of her head. Blood immediately began to ooze from her eye. "On your knees, Hollow," he ordered, using his alpha authoritative aura to force her down. Chapter 3. Her Wolf. "On your knees, Hollow," he ordered, using his alpha authoritative aura to force her down. Viola went down on her knees with a force that hurt her kneecaps, her head bowed as blood dripped from her eye to the floor, her body trembling under the weight of the Alpha's energy. I am sorry, Luna," she said, hot tears mixing with blood as they rolled down her face. "I would have killed you, but our pack is running short of hollows to work and serve my Luna." "Get out," he yelled, dismissing the useless hollow before turning his attention back to his mate. "Where were we, pet?" Evan purred. "Let me blow on the finger for you." Before Viola closed the door of the room, she turned over her shoulder and looked at the couple through her good eye with pure resentment. For days after that, Viola couldn't see through her right eye, and her head ached constantly. She wasn't given food and was still forced to take the pill to conceal her scent while she worked, serving the Luna of the pack. Many times she thought she would die from the stomach cramps caused by the pill and the lack of food, but she didn't. Death would have been welcomed, but the moon goddess didn't see a worthless creature like her as worthy of even that. She crossed paths with her parents and former friends in the halls of the Alpha's estate a few times, but they acted as though they didn't know her as they walked past. They treated her like air, at least air was still acknowledged, because people breathed it in. Her father could have saved her from this fate, but since she wasn't his biological daughter, she wasn't surprised he allowed her to suffer. They had only tolerated her because of the benefits she brought them while she was still with Evan and because of her potential to become a Luna. Now that she had been reduced to a hollow, they had no reason to acknowledge her or tolerate her any longer. She had lived most of the 19 years of her life training to be a Luna, making her adoptive parents proud so they would never regret their decision of adopting her from a nightmare, and they had happily announced her to everyone as their beloved daughter, until 4 years ago, when she became a disgrace. And if she told herself that every single rejection didn't cut her down to the soul, it would be a lie she could never truly believe. Starvation wasn't enough for the new Luna to torment Viola. Many times, Lenny sent for her to serve her and deliberately found ways to complicate things in order to torture her further. All of Viola's old friends had now started to hover around the new Luna and joined hands to make her life miserable. She looks like a walking ghost, and she smells like sewers. "Hey, Hollow, clean my heels with your tongue right now," ordered one of the Luna's friends, who had once been Viola's own friend. They all laughed as they watched her do their bidding in the most humiliating way possible. "Useless piece of shit. I hope she doesn't steal your food, Luna. She doesn't look starved enough for a hollow," remarked Lily, the daughter of the beta of a neighboring small pack that sought the favor of the Moonwillow pack, someone who had lived her life bootlicking Viola in the past and bad-mouthing Lenny. Lenny glanced toward the skinny Hollow kneeling before her guest, the maid's uniform hanging on her body like a sack. She would soon turn invisible with how thin she was becoming, Lenny thought with quiet satisfaction. She wouldn't dare steal, because every Hollow knows the consequence of such an action, the Luna said with a hidden smile, and with that, she continued to make Viola's life even harder. "Ouch, she clipped off my finger." Lenny would cry, and the Alpha would appear in a blink, hitting Viola or ordering the Deltas to give her an overdose of wolfsbane and force her to kneel outside in the sun. "She cut my hair too short," Lenny cried, and an enraged Evan would kick or punch Viola without any care for the damage he caused. That night, Viola lay broken and in pain in the cold hollow room, staring at the sliver of moonlight spilling through the window as silent tears rolled down the corners of her eyes. She couldn't help but wonder, for the 100th time, what had made Lenny, and the man she had given her everything, hate her to this extent, and why the moon goddess had chosen such a fate for her. "Why me, moon goddess? Is it because of what I did years ago? I was just a girl drunk in love and I already regret it, isn't that enough punishment?" She whispered under her breath, feeling a huge lump rise in her throat. She had been a terrible person before, all in the name of love, but that love had deserted her, leaving her with a painful bitter present. She had regretted many things she did in the past, wasn't that enough punishment? Was this really her fate? "I don't like my fate, take my life if you will continue to make me suffer for being a broken wolfless." Viola was used to crying to the moon and never getting any response, never any comfort from anyone because she had nobody. For 4 years her days had been filled with suffering and immense loneliness that slowly ate away something in her soul. Having no one in the world was like a painful curse that would slowly break the heart and crush the soul. But at that moment, she suddenly felt a strange stir of energy that started sizzling deep into her veins like a foreign power or being. She had never felt this way before. What was happening to her? She gripped her head. Just as that question formed in her mind, she heard a strange, distant voice inside her head. "You are not wolfless. I am here. Make it right and find me. Find our fated mate and find Ivy. Once you do that, I will become to you." Viola jerked upright in shock at the sudden voice of her wolf. Her wolf. She had a wolf. Her heart began to pound rapidly and she reached into the recesses of her mind, to that voice that just startled her and gave her sudden hope at the same time but met nothing but a quiet emptiness, as if the being that had just surfaced within her had suddenly vanished. It was almost as if she had imagined it. No matter how hard she tried to call out to her again, there was only silence that met her, nothing but the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Had she imagined the voice just now? Not everyone had the ability to communicate with their wolves, only alphas were said to speak with their inner wolves. What could this mean? Her wolf hadn't surfaced, yet she had clearly heard her voice just moments ago. What did she mean by find her? And their fated mate? That was impossible. Without a wolf, one could never find their true mate or even know it them. And without a mate, Viola knew she would rot here forever and die being a hollow. But Ivy, every muscle in her body went rigid at the name she had tried to erase from her life, failed to erase, and was still haunted by. Ivy, her twin sister and the only person who had truly loved her in this world. Yet Viola had ruined everything and caused their separation, just as she had ruined her own life by trusting and loving Evan. If Ivy and her fated mate were the only way for her to get her wolf and be free, then Viola knew it was almost impossible. She would never be able to find her fated mate without her wolf. And her twin sister. Was it because of her twin's absence that her wolf had refused to surface? Viola wondered, and her heart shattered into pieces as the thought settled in, knowing it was impossible to find Ivy now, not after what Viola had done to her years ago. I am doomed, she cried to herself, curling into a small ball on the cold floor, arms wrapped tightly around her knees, and weeping herself into another nightmarish sleep, one of her twin, who had hunted her relentlessly for years. Chapter 4. Step Away from Her. Part 1. The next morning, Viola felt sick and weak, unable to wake up early before the brutal ways of the Delta's method to wake them. She gasped as cold, freezing water dozed on her head and a kick landed in her gut, as the Delta ordered harshly. Get up. You are called to join the Omega Helpers to clean the hall for the Moon Festival. URG, I can't do anything today, I am sick, Viola thought, but she soon found herself roughly hurled from the floor and shoved outside to dress in the worker's uniform. There were many Omega workers today, perhaps due to the special occasion. The Moon Festival was the time of the year when many packs came together to celebrate and to also find their fated mates. Because sometimes werewolves' fated mates didn't always come from the same pack, it was customary to gather at every Moon Festival. It was a big event where the hollows were kept away from the celebration after they finished cleaning and preparing the guests' rooms, the large halls, and the outdoor area where the moon howling would happen deep at night. Viola had never been to any Moon Festival, because only those with a wolf were allowed to attend. However, she was not looking forward to this one as a hollow, because it always meant double the work, and encountering familiar people from her past, those who would insult her and sneer at the position she had fallen to. She could see the Omegas getting excited for the event, as they would get to peek at the handsome alphas and betas who would come from different packs, and some of them still held the ridiculous notion of being noticed and becoming a mate to an alpha from another pack. Lucky them, they had wolves, could still hope for mates, and still had a real chance of joining another pack, unlike the hollows, who could not even sense their own mates. This was the first time the festival was happening in Moonwillow after Viola's fall from grace and her reduction to the lowest position. In the other years of her being a hollow, the festival had happened in other packs, and the werewolves of Moonwillow had traveled to attend elsewhere, leaving only the Gamma to protect their territories. Now inside the big, mighty neoclassical estate hall, Viola tried to ignore the Omegas peeking at the arriving guests through the windows, whispering and gushing at every new arrival. Look, he's so handsome. One of them squealed. That's Alpha Enzo from Blue River Pack. I've seen pictures of him online, he looks even more handsome in person. The Omegas were allowed to own communication devices but the hollows weren't. It was another downside to being among the lowest possible ranks in the pack. Viola didn't get to see gossip news or internet discussion about other packs because they couldn't own a phone or any device at all. Alpha Enzo might find his mate here today. I've been praying to the Moon Goddess to find my mate in Blue River Pack because their pack is so beautiful. If the Moon Goddess is generous and decides to give me Alpha Enzo as my mate. They all squealed at the same time as if it was something they all collectively wished for. They all shared the same dreams anyway, to be miraculously paired with an alpha. Don't worry girls, our mates will be some of the best males out there. Viola didn't blame them from dreaming. The only problem she had was that their daydreams made them step on the very floors she was mopping. Hey, Hollow, did you just spill mop water at me? Their attention was suddenly drawn to her when one of them yelled. Viola looked at the Omega's leg where a tiny drop of water sat. Technically, she didn't spill the water, they had just decided to gather exactly where she was cleaning and wouldn't move away. The drop of water had accidentally fallen on her. Instead of arguing, Viola reached to a table and grabbed a paper towel, then handed it to the girl who looked pissed, but rather than taking the paper towel she merely scoffed. Are you expecting me to wipe that off myself? You're a hollow, by rank you're lower than me, so shouldn't you get on your knees and clean that up? The other Omegas giggled instead of rebuking their friend for bullying someone below her in the pack. Elsie, you'll make a perfect Luna. So bossy. They praised her, still enforcing the daydreams of being mated to an alpha today. Viola didn't say a word. Instead she turned to leave, choosing to ignore them, but someone yanked her hair backwards, pulling her. I can't believe a hollow can be this disrespectful. I said, wipe that off. The drop of water must have dried off by now, but it was evident this Omega just wanted to put her down to fulfill her fantasy of being a Luna. One would always believe Omegas were the most innocent, pitiful creatures in a pack, until they found someone lower than them, someone they, too, could step on. Viola gritted her teeth, feeling fury beginning to well up within her. Her gaze on the Omega was sharp, and something merciless suddenly glimmered in her deep blue eyes. Such a sharp gaze from a nobody in the pack further infuriated the Omega. Lower those eyes, how dare you look at me like that? She said through gritted teeth, further yanking Viola's hair even more harshly. In this moment, someone suddenly burst into the room. What is going on here? One of the head housekeepers walked in, and the Omega immediately released Viola, rushing to stand aside as if nothing was going on. Nothing, Miss Kelly, they echoed. The woman didn't seem to care what they were doing. Whether they hurt the hollows or not didn't concern her. Hurry up and fix the guest rooms. The guests will be arriving soon. Leave that window. Viola, Luna Lenny has asked for you in her room immediately. Leave what you are doing and go, the head housekeepers ordered. Viola felt her feverish, hot body suddenly turn even feverish at those words. Why her again of all the workers? She didn't have the strength to go through more of Lenny's petty, subtle insult and harsh torture. Viola left the mop and bucket at the side and went to the Luna's room, where she found Lenny preparing for the event. A makeup artist was caking her face with thick layers of foundation, making her look like a pale ghost. Lenny gave Viola a sweet, innocent smile in the mirror reflection, waving the makeup artist aside. What a pity your first moon festival in our pack will be as a hollow. And that too, you won't even be attending. I want to feel sorry for you. Really, Viola, but I can't help enjoying watching you suffer every single day. Viola remained silent, staring at Lenny in the mirror as she twirled a strand of her brown hair around her finger. Her expression revealed nothing. She only clenched her fingers tightly, the slight tightening the only sign that she had heard Lenny's words. However, Lenny hated that she wasn't getting the reaction she wanted. She was now the queen of the pack, and this nobody should always show she was miserable and envious of her, just like Lenny herself had once been envious of Viola. You were adopted by my uncle and have no blood relation to the Lindens, yet you took all the love and attention. Arrogant, taking over the Luna practices of our pack. I told myself one day I would bring this bitch down into the dirt if it was the last thing I did. And I have won, Viola. I will always win. Villainesses like you. Lenny turned to face Viola, her eyes cold, belong in the gutter. No one will ever genuinely want you, especially now that fate itself has brought you down. Viola said nothing. She made no sound. Her fists tightened until her fingers dug crescent marks into her palms. The back of her eyes burned with unshed tears, and her throat ached with the words she wanted to retort, but she couldn't. For the first time in her entire life, she agreed with Lenny. She was right. Viola Linden was no longer worthy of a voice, nor someone anyone would genuinely want without what she could give them. A bitter laugh almost slipped, but she bit it back and bowed her head instead. How may I be of your service today, Luna? She asked. Dignity, pride, and self-respect had all been stripped from her, 4 years ago. Lenny laughed, a hearty, beautiful laugh. You won't be serving me today, Viola. There are other tasks for you. You will join the workers who go down the cliff to arrange and decorate the place before the moon rises. I want you back before the ceremony begins, so you won't soil it with your presence. Yes, Luna, Viola said, and she was dismissed with a wave of Lenny's hand. She didn't notice the smirk on Lenny's face as she left, nor did she hear the Luna calling for someone and asking. Did you do as I said? The Delta she asked bowed slightly. Yes, Luna. Good. I can't wait to get rid of her. Lenny thought to herself with a smirk. Chapter 5. Step away from her. Part 2. Viola gladly left the estate with a few of the Gammas and Hollows, who went in different directions so they could get the work done on time, as they would be using 2 cliff locations for the moon howling. She couldn't help but appreciate the fresh air outside. 4 Gammas escorted her to meet the others at the cliffside. The estate was already filled with luxurious cars of the arriving guests, and the sun was setting, casting its rays on the sparkling vehicles. She missed the time when she had her own array of cars and gammas at her beck and call, but now she could only walk the long distance to the cliffside. The Moonwillow Pack community was arranged in such a way that skyscraper apartment buildings lined the sides of the smooth roads, with the Alpha's estate being the largest structure. Many packs built their communities differently. Unlike human countries, werewolves didn't live away from their packs, they stayed and lived in the same city under the Alpha's rules. Currently, Viola and the Gammas didn't take a car and walked into the forested part of the city. The walk was a little longer than she had expected it to be. Viola was already feeling strange inside herself, but she didn't think much about it and blamed it on working and walking on an empty stomach. Since the day Evan had hit her with the idol, her vision in her right eye had been blurry and slightly unfocused, and trying to force herself to see from it only caused her pain and headache. "Is this the way to the cliff?" she asked, noticing that the Gammas were leading her deeper into the trees with no cliff in sight. If they heard her question, they gave no indication and continued to walk. They seemed to be leaving the pack's territory as the city sight and noise became distant. She had never attended the Moon Festival and didn't know the location, but a strange feeling inside her told her they were walking the wrong way. Could the cliff where the festival happened be this deep and far away? She wondered. The sun had completely set, and the cricket sounds could be heard from the bushes. Her hand holding the flower basket was already growing numb, along with her headache. Viola slowed her steps as something didn't feel right. Though she had known these Gammas for years in their pack, she didn't trust them, not when she had no authority over them and they could do as they pleased to her. She was beginning to wonder what they were up to when she felt a thread of heat grow inside her stomach, spreading all the way to her chest. She suddenly felt exposed and unbearably hot. She stopped walking completely, dropping the basket to the ground, the flowers inside scattering around her. Heat rose to her face, spreading across her entire body and settling uncomfortably in the area below her abdomen. Viola recognized what it was even before the full signs showed themselves. Her pheromones were acting up and forcing her into heat. No, this wasn't good. She had made sure to take the pills this morning, so it shouldn't be acting up now. The pill was known to be strong and lasted for 24 hours. If it wasn't working now, when it had always held for the past 4 years, it meant she had taken the wrong one. Everything began to make sense to Viola. Lenny, only she could have done this. Anger washed over her, but it was soon replaced by despair as her body became hypersensitive, reacting in a sexual way that any werewolf nearby could perceive and be drawn to. She was exposed in the open, stripped bare for predators to sense and hunt. She hated it, hated how her own body betrayed her, sending out a scent she couldn't hide. She saw the Gammas walking ahead turn back to look at her, lust and anger flashing in their eyes. "You didn't conceal your smell, did you?" One of them sneered as he retraced his steps and turned toward her. Among werewolves, there was a belief that any female who didn't conceal her pheromones was inviting to be led and fucked. I did, but," Viola began, but suddenly her body clenched with arousal, a sharp ache rising inside her. No, not now, please. I can't be in this state. Don't worry, we will help you ease the ache, Hollow, and no one will ever know about it. We'll make you enjoy getting fucked like an animal. Isn't that what you wanted for not concealing yourself?" Viola, flushed and angry by her own strong feelings, shook her head. "No, don't you dare touch me," she warned as she began to walk backward, hugging her arms protectively around herself. One of the Gammas laughed. "Let's see who will stop us, because it's definitely not you, a wolfless." "Get her." Viola swirled around, gathered her skirt in her hand, and began to run. She ran into the woods, the sharp thorns brushing her ankles and arms, but she didn't pay attention to that pain, knowing she was in danger of being gang R**ped. No one would stand up for her if that were to happen, because they would say she had asked for it by not concealing her pheromone. No matter how animalistically aroused she was, she wouldn't let them touch her. But having been starved and working since morning, her energy drained quickly. At the moment she turned her head to see how far away they were from her, she realized her efforts of running didn't matter at all as the 4 Gammas soon caught up to her. One of them suddenly landed in front of her, causing her to bump into him with a force that threw her backward into the hands of another, whose arms came around her to crush her breasts. Terror rose in her, and she twisted violently to escape his grip, but her strength and malnourished body gave her no advantage against their large forms and strength. No, 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 don't do this. Let me go, she cried as another one of them tackled her to the ground, and the other began to rip off her clothes. Don't fight it, Hollow. We know you want it. Your body is asking for it. Look, your nipples are taut and hard, and I bet you are dripping wet for our cocks. We will make it worthwhile. He growled, roughly gripping her nipples and reaching to remove her skirt. Viola let out a cry of anguish and twisted on the ground like a wild cat forced into captivity. No, 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 don't do this to me. But none of her struggles managed to push them off, and fear began to grip her tightly. She screamed, but one of them slapped her hard across the face, her head jerking to the side from the force. Shut up, bitch. Stop acting like you don't want it. Get your filthy hands off me. I don't want it, Viola cried, as her legs were pinned to the ground. She watched one of them pull down his trousers, and terror flooded her, her heart hammering in fear as nothing she did made a difference. But just when she thought they would succeed in what they were about to do to her, she felt a sudden shift in the air, and it seemed the Gammas felt it too. They froze, their eyes snapping in a certain direction beyond her. She couldn't see what made the one removing his trouser or the one pinning her hands above her head stop, but she heard a deep, resounding voice speak, "Step away from her." The voice was not only deep and thick, it carried the commanding resonance that only an alpha's voice possessed.